Welcome to Advus After Hours, a podcast focused on the intersection of innovation, finance, and community. My name is Mitchell Lamoriello, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jeff Lee.
Hey there.
And today we're joined by a guest who, if you're from the Central Florida community, needs very little introduction. Jay Chaudhari is a lifelong Floridian, a native to Orlando, with over 18 years of experience in the private equity and real estate industries. He's also the co-founder and partner of 1858 Capital Partners, and is a graduate of the University of Florida and the Crummer School of Business at Rollins College. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. No, appreciate it.
So we gave you the rundown again of what we're trying to accomplish here, right? We're having conversations at the intersection of innovation, finance, and community. And what you've done at 1858, what you've done in all the other business ventures you're either a partner, an investor, or an advisor in, and what you've done in the community is thematically on point. And so we're going to get to all that, but I think we first want to discuss your upbringing in the Central Florida community, what your trajectory was to where you're at now.
You know, as I tell people, I was born and raised in Orlando. That always seems to freak people out because everybody seems to have, transplanted here or moved here. And
Yeah.
I had somebody the other day even say, you're the 10th person that's told me that in the last 15 years of being here. And, I think it's, and I know a lot of people who are from Orlando, but I think it was more like even my, my class, people my age were typically from this area. So I think that may have been sort of the first, like, people had moved here, started raising their families here. And, raising a family here is awesome.
Yeah,
we live in the best city on the planet, quite frankly. So I always thought growing up, if I want to get into business, I need to get into construction and real estate. So went to University of Florida, focused in business, didn't really know what area. I just was like, this is the track, I think I want to go. I don't want to say I always wanted to move back, it was definitely on the list of places, but when you're young, you think at the time, right? Like you just want to go to cool cities like
Right.
New York,
Right.
Atlanta was like huge then. That a lot of guys went there.
It's like the SEC professional hub is Atlanta.
Exactly.
Atlanta and Charlotte.
Well, they just have, they just had more, opportunities for undergrads.
Yeah, it's common at Florida, I think we saw the same thing where it was almost everyone feels like they have to go to New York, to San Francisco, Atlanta, wherever it is.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then, in my instance, I was like, well, I graduated from Florida and then, spent an extra semester or two up there working at my friend's bar because, we were just having fun. And I luckily convinced my parents that, I can get a job and want to get some experience, which they did. I mean, they gave me a reference. They said I was in management.
I think we're familiar with this bar.
Yeah,
I was going to bring this up. I'm
Grads.
glad you already did.
Yeah, it was the bank. It was the bank bar and lounge.
Yes.
And he started it. It was because we were all fight adults up there, and he started and became. I have to give him credit. Like it became, the place you go, you get dressed up to go out.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like you go to Swamp on Wednesdays, and then you go to bank like Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
Over the weekend and stuff. So. I stay up there and I'm handling, what was I handling? Oh, payroll, because everyone's like stealing money from a bar, right?
Naturally, yeah.
And so I'm like sitting there working and I go, okay, I think I like this. I wonder if I can go do my MBA. And, I was in school mode. I was like, let me get my MBA now. Everywhere was work for 2 years. Then you can get your MBA. I was like, well, I'm in school mode. I can just, bang it out. And so Rollins had that early advantage MBA. So I applied there, got in there. And that's, when I started to kind of hone in on, what I wanted to do. So the way they do their MBA, I guess in accounting, they had tests, but everything else was group format, presentations, projects. And I really enjoyed that atmosphere, working in a team atmosphere, presenting, public speaking's never been an issue for me. So I always presented the most, which was nice because some of the other people, just wanted to do the work, which again was nice. But I remember that's when they came out with the GIS systems, right? So like you could look up real estate instead of going to like Winter Park, property records and looking through a book. Everything became like satellite technology. So from your computer, you could research who owns the property, what they paid, and all of that. So I started to kind of get okay, I think real estate might be something I want to do. My family's background was in real estate, civil environmental engineering and real estate development.
Gotcha.
So I was like, all right. So I happened to talk to my dad about it. And in that conversation is when he tells me, he's like, hey, look, I've been meaning to tell you I was diagnosed with leukemia. I've got maybe 5 years. I need somebody to come on anyways. I was going to hire somebody to come on, help me finish out projects and, help, run the business, the engineering side of the business, just to kind of keep it afloat, running. I mean, these were boom years. This is like, he tells me in '02 and he passed in '07. So if that was right before that drop, and that was, real estate was crazy. So I was like, he's like, why don't you come on? I'll teach you everything I know. I was like, oh, okay. And my dad and I were best friends. So it was a no brainer for me. So then I go and work for him. And I didn't realize, I thought I was like, oh, I'm just going to like work there and he takes the lead with stuff. But it was like, he just would throw me into these meetings and I'm just figuring things out on my own. And I'm quick on my feet and can think clear, but I had no experience. Like I didn't even know what was going on. So I
baptized by fire.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy, but I mean, that's the way I've always had to learn, like just visual learning, right? Like just be in the moment, like just watch people do their thing and, you pick up off of it. But we were, we're like developing projects for publicly owned home builders. We were developing some of our own projects. The engineering business was booming because of all of the development. And what I realized, what I was really good that this is how it kind of transitioned me from, strictly real estate to working with companies or operating companies. For every project, right? Anytime you develop anything, it's capital, right?
Right.
And the way the capital works is you're basically, you line up the money, you're spending money the whole time, and then you wait to make it, right? So you're like, it's not like you just cash flow right away.
Right.
So when I started putting these, debt and equity packages together, and the equity was like friends and family equity, I wasn't going out to institutions or anything. And the debt was like community banks, So I would go do the presentation, put the packages together. And that's what I realized, like working with the capital market side of it, and then doing the presentations at rezoning meetings and the, development approval meetings and all the commissioners and mayor, dealing with that. I was like, oh, okay, so I think I can work this, I think I understand people enough and how that dynamic works while being able to line up capital. And I've figured out those were probably my strengths in all of it. I mean, like construction, developing, I don't know how to do. I mean, I just knew how to line things up, and we would hire people to do that. So had a good run. And then, my dad passed away in June 25th of '07. And I was like, okay, well, I think it's, and we did well. We finished the projects, entered, at that time I was like, I'm ready to go out on my own, And so as I'm lined up to go out on my own, the market just completely is done. I mean, not even like there's a slowdown. I mean, this was, the Great Recession and everything. So then I'm like, all right, now what? So I think at that time, I remember I started playing golf more because I was like, oh, I have time. Let me get back to playing golf and maybe get a little better. But I remember, where it ties back to growing up here is I was always a social kid, right? I had friends at, I'm at Trinity Prep. I had friends at Winter Park High, Lake Mary High, Bishop Moore, Lake Highland, Dr. Phillips. And we just, throughout college, even afterwards, I was like, wow, I actually know some people. And we've all, been out of school and have moving up in our careers. And, now this whole Great Recession happened. I'm like, let me reach out to some people, see what's out there. And so as real estate, I thought everything was distressed real estate, right? That's what everybody kept saying. And then it turned into, okay, well, I can't find as many of those opportunities like I thought. The whole world isn't shut down. There's businesses going. So just through friends, I met, actually, I think I'm wearing their shirt today. Actually, the first, I just realized that because it's the only solid color shirt.
I actually woke up this morning. I was like, this is my only solid color
no, when
shirt.
you guys said that, because I looked in my closet, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have print all over, my golf shirt.
We all realized that this morning.
Yeah.
And so, I end up meeting, His name's Tony Wibbler. He's the founder, CEO of Boulder Industries. And just through friends of mine, I was like, look, I I know I don't know much about other industries, but if there's companies right now, I have a network of people that are looking to invest equity, like friends and family equity, and a lot of my friends started doing pretty well, and they're like, hey, let's look at some stuff together. And just through a friend, we go to Fishbones in Lake Mary. I remember I meet Tony for the first time, and we were there for like 4 or 5 hours. And he was telling me, hey, I'm in this private equity backed deal here locally, managing landfills. Now with the recession, it's all, going to litigation. And I was a hired gun. And he goes, listen, I figured out a way to recycle waste. And, I just need some help getting the initial round of capital raised. I'll put some money in, and he's like, I'll put money in and just need somebody who can help me do it. And I go, look, I don't know shit about your industry. I don't know anything about this, but I go, I do have one of my best friends. He's an attorney at Schutz and Bowen. He'll come in with sweat equity and invest with me.
Mm.
I'll run the process to raise that initial round of capital, and I'll be, that person until you take it to the next step.
Yep.
And going through that, and we raised, and I mean, this is when everybody's like, the sky is falling and everything. I mean, we raised $2 million right off the bat. Me and my friend John were the literally first investors in this thing. And I realized doing that, seeing the company from this was what was that, October of 2011. Then they, brought on some people, found consultants, and were able to acquire their first project. And then from there, they took down VC funding, debt, all this, and went crazy. And that's when I realized, I'm like, man, I really enjoy this. It was creating something from scratch. I mean, we meet at a restaurant. I think he had a business plan. I don't even know if he did. I mean, it was like one of those. Not to say that's what I always look for. I'm
Right.
This is more now looking back.
Well, this
all
is in the
sounds
infancy
great.
stages of what
Yeah.
you're now doing.
Exactly. I mean, and I remember at the time, my wife was pregnant with our kid, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to invest in this company. She's like, what are you talking about? I mean, it was by far the biggest risk I've ever taken in my life. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I started to realize, I was like, I'll always be able to find real estate opportunities, as they come up and get involved in that. But I was like, for me to build something long term, I think this is what I know how to meet people. I know how to put people together as far as lining up capital as well.
Right.
It just, I just realized, I think between people skills and access to capital might be, what I'm supposed to be doing. And after doing that, worked with a couple other companies. I mean, not all of them were winners, right? I mean, even this one, multiple times, we're down to nothing in the account. What are we going to tell the investor? What are we going to do? This is over. And, there are other companies didn't work out, and, you learn from that, right? I mean, it's you're not going to, learn from all the things that go well. And after a while, some of these companies I'd worked on, even, I think I told you the most fun one we worked on was the smallest deal I ever did was the Gringos Locos stores. So that was so much fun. Great group of people in that. And, it was after that that's when I joined consulting practice here in Winter Park. And when I joined them, they were like, hey, we need some help. You're working with these companies at this size. You've been involved early on. Some of them are either at that stage or about to exit. And, it'd be great to just get a set of eyes on it and stuff. And they go, look, at the same time, we need help with business development. Nobody does that around here.
Right.
And you like meeting with people, enough people. And I mean, during that, I was there about 3 years, working with companies and, all different types of companies. And that's what I enjoyed about it. I've worked with all companies, different industries, help to bring in business, get the word out, and then networking, right? I mean, that's something, being from here, going to a big school. And when people during that recession saw me out there doing deals, they're like, Jay, good for you, man. We're all worried and nervous, and you're taking risks. I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea, but it all just kind of came together. Also, timing wise, age wise, right? At that time, I'm 40, 41.
Okay.
And then you realize wait, all of my friends who were, like junior associates or whatever are now like partners, at the firm. So I think the network too, just over time, people become decision makers
Mhm.
and are also business owners,
Right.
left or doing their own thing. And that's what led to 1858 was, wow, like timing in life, worked on enough deals, a lot of the deals that like, oh, hey, he worked with them early on. It's like, oh wow, now we're reading about them and they're doing some major
Yeah.
transactions and are doing well. And that's when I realized, the people part, even in partnerships, I've been in bad partnerships. I chased deals, didn't pay attention to the people. Those deals went bad.
Mm.
I met great people. There were some okay deals. Those went well.
Mhm.
So go figure, right? Like I wish I had some formula to it, but it's really
It sounds
just
like that is the
I think
formula.
that is right. I mean, and that's why even with 1858, it's myself and three partners, best partnership I've ever been in my entire life. Great guys, and we just realized, hey, there's a good opportunity between all of our network skill sets. There's really a gap in the local market, really a gap in the market in general, quite
Right.
frankly, with lower middle market companies and up. Why don't we create this shop instead of working independently? Let's just do it. You know,
Right.
Jay, what would you say is the biggest differentiator between you all and a traditional investment bank?
I think there's two things that really set us apart. One, I like to at least tell everybody, and I think it's very important with what we do. We do all of our work in house. So when you see the team, our full time team, we do all of the work. So we do everything from preparing the teaser, pitch decks, financials, market research, the distribution list, coordinating, interacting with potential buyers. All of that is done in house. And the reason I do mention that is I know of other firms that, there are a few people at the firm and they outsource everything. When you outsource everything, you just lose that quality of work product and control. So when you see our team and we say we're the team that's going to work on it, we do 100% of the work in house. So, number one, I think that's important. Of us came
Mhm.
together. The other part of it is the people and the shareholders at 1858. And when I say the people, there's the full time team, right? The founders, the four founders, our employees. But when we were forming the company, we actually were like, you know what? If we're going to build this business, we want to build it right. Let's put a board together to kind of keep things in check and have some governance. So as we're approaching the board, so the four of us originally were like, hey, we can seed this thing, bootstrap it, and get to deal one and build it up, just like any other startup, right? But then with the board members, we started approaching some of them, and these guys were like, for me, like big deals in town, right? Like people who've built big businesses and everything. I mean, a couple guys like a Rick Walsh, like I was talking about Darden at one
Mhm.
point, so
Yeah.
like, 'cause that's why I'm like I love Darden. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. No, but like a guy like Rick Walsh, when we approached him, he's like, I love this. This is awesome. Like, happy to be on the board. Guys like, my friend Scotty Brian, has a huge construction company building up Amazon fulfillment centers, up and down the East Coast. Joe Nunziata, FBC Mortgage, right? Like these are the kind of guys like, I mean, there's more, right? We have 10 board members. I'm just kind of touching on a few of them.
Mhm.
Um, and it's funny when we did approach them, they go, hey, so like, can we invest? We're like, what? Like, yeah, look, like if you guys are really coming together and doing this, we want a piece of this. We want to be a part of this. And I was like, well, why? Like, we didn't think about that, but why not? And then it kind of opened up our heads like, wait, in order for us to be able to compete, start the business, surround ourselves with good people, it's like, let's put this board together. There's people like I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, like Alan Brinkman, Bud Scholl, um, Rob Penapino. Uh, uh, gosh, I know I'm leaving some people out. Here, I'm gonna look it up while I'm talking. But when we did that, we also decided outside of the board to open it up to, a friends and family kind of
Right.
race, something I've done, numerous
Right.
times in
Yeah.
my past. And when we did that, we started to look at some of the people we knew and we said, let's bring in our friends and family, but strategic people. And so what that helps us do when we are pitching a company, we're able to pull from, this group of investors. There's the board, a group of investors that are all part of 1858 because they all said, "Hey, this is great for us. This is a place we're all in the community. We have a piece of, this, you know, uh, M&A firm, investment bank, because they typically would sell, find an opportunity, send it to somebody else. Someone makes a big fee off it and they get a bottle of wine or something. And so they go, now we actually have a stake in something. So what's really cool is, when we do compete, there's our team. We show them the board members we mentioned, especially with some of the companies, we'll pull from some of the shareholders that have industry expertise. And that's another reason why I feel like we compete. I mean, I think the four of us who founded the firm, our employees, present very well. But when you add that whole layer of our board members, I hear a couple, Sean Bush, Dave Carmody, and our independents like Ron Piccolo and Bud Scholl. So when we put that up against somebody else, they're like, okay, wait, these guys, yeah, it's a new firm, but these guys have been around a while. And my goodness, look at the other people that are part of this company that can help us. So I just thought I'd mention that because as much as I like to pat ourselves on the back for creating this firm, we never could have done it without the board members or our investors.
And having them as a resource is incredible. Like if you're obviously you guys do business outside of Central Florida, but if you're a Central Florida business who's in need of what you all do, your services, why would they not look at you all with the team you have behind you? It just makes complete sense.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole story, start to finish, and the things I've learned along the way, it's really just, building, maintaining relationships. Just do what you say you're going to do, just do the right thing, even if it means it's going to cost you money. I've done the right thing a lot of times and it's cost me, but over time it'll pay off. And then you always have to give back, all the, philanthropic work I've done in the community, just because, I mean, again, with my dad passing away from leukemia, I myself, when I was 12, had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Really?
And was treated.
Really?
Yeah, that's why I do all the stuff with Make-A-Wish.
Wishmakers?
Yeah.
Make-A-Wish,
Gotcha.
So luckily, I was supposed to be treated for about 2 or 3 years, but luckily, I was treated for 12 months because I responded really well in the first 6 months. That they were like, "Hey, we can stop this after you have to check up on you, obviously." But yeah, I had a tumor right here, my lymph node, right next to my liver, actually. And it's funny, like going through that, and when you're in the hospital, I had to get treatment. So I had to get treatments. What was it, like every other weekend? Whatever it was. The weekend was the NBA All-Star game here in town. You're in there in a hospital for a weekend as a 12-year-old kid. It sucks. Like, it's like and I had to get homeschooled. I couldn't even go to school because physically I just couldn't get through the day. And Make-A-Wish brought NBA players to come by the floor. So I played video games with them and everything. And I remember I was like, man, this is the best weekend. That was the best weekend of that whole year. So when a friend of mine's like, hey, you should come to Wishmakers Ball with me and, check it out. I was like, oh, wow, that'd be great. And then I got tied into the organization. I was like, I want to volunteer on the committee. And then I ended up chairing it for a few years, raised over $1 million this year when we had it, which was awesome. I mean, that was the best feeling in the world, man. But it's between that and with like Mark Brewer's group, Central Florida Foundation, those two groups, it's funny. It's like you get to give back to the community. Then you also get to meet all these amazing people. And then as you get to know these amazing people, you start talking shop a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's funny. Like you go in with the intention to give back and help, and all of a sudden it turns into opportunities and networking. So, it's again, I think just timing with what we did with 1858, even with my partners too. It's like we've all done our own things and built up all of this goodwill and kind of figured out how to make this work. And when you put a group like that together, it's, look, we just launched this year, but so far so good. I'm not going to sit here and say, we've been killing it for years, but I just feel already that we've got, when you launch and win clients before you even open up your office, I mean, that's the market telling you something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I know we talk a lot about community. Why don't you tell us about the 1858 name? Because that definitely ties back to Winter Park for sure.
So we didn't start with that name. So us, you look at our bios, you're like, man, these guys pretty smart guys, right? We could not come up with a name. And then the names we came up with.
Different side of the brain.
Oh, it's a different side of the brain. And the names we came up with were terrible. I mean, like the most generic, like, it was like.
I was like, give us some good ones.
No, here. No, I'll give you. Is it like this is how plain it was. Winter Park Merchant Bank. Winter Park Capital. And then it was like Winter Park Capital Partners and Merchant Bank. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I go, come on, man. So then it was like what was it like? Winter Park Capital MB, all this generic, and we were so embarrassed. We like go home. We were like asking our wives, who are actually like creative people,
right?
And they're like, "You're joking, right?" Like, and we're like, "No."
That's what you came up with all day.
They're like, "Wait, so you guys met for how many hours?"
Yeah,
and that's what you guys came up with. So as we started going down the trademark process, I mean, every name's taken, right?
Yeah.
So one of my partners goes, he goes, you know what? We should do numbers. Like I like numbers, and he's a brilliant guy, great poker player, and just he just started thinking, he's like, everything's with numbers with what we're dealing with. So we went to the Winter Park Library, and we're like, hey, like we need a little history lesson. What are some milestone years for Winter Park? Right. So there's quite a few, obviously, but when we saw 1858 and we said it, I was like, oh man, that
sounds clean,
really rolls off the tongue really well. And that's the year Dr. Mizell came down and settled Winter Park. So we're like, look, if we're going to be a group in Winter Park, we know we're going to open up our office there. We that out of my partners, 3 of us all have a tie. We all did our MBAs at Crummer. Okay. So we had the Rollins tie in there. And we said, we should call it and luckily no trademark issues, And so we were like, that's it. That's what it's going to be. So, that's how we came up with it. And it's funny, when you go through, with a marketing company, naming, branding, because they go, look, it's 1858 Capital Partners, but always refer to yourselves as 1858. Like, don't say Capital Partners. And we're at this conference last week, and it's great. Like people we were talking to, we have a LinkedIn page, and we're always calling it and we would tell everybody, even the people we hired at our office, when you introduce yourself, right? Like, you say your name and you're from 1858. Right. That's it. And we had people coming up to our booth. They're like, hey, the 1858 guys. Hey, how's it going? Yeah. And we're like, oh man, people are actually saying it. So it's worked out well. Yeah. We love the name. Love the name.
Love that.
Where do you think Orlando goes from here? Like the next 10 years, what does it look like?
I think it's going to continue to grow. I mean, there's obviously a lot of, you guys are obviously hearing it. Recession fears, inflation fears, this and that. I think we're positioned to handle that pretty well. I mean, maybe we have a dip, but it's not going to be a crash by any sense. I mean, what we're seeing, M&A activity is still up, debt's drying up a little bit. It's still available, but what we're seeing is more, like seller financing, more equity down. Earnouts are a little longer. So deal structure has changed. Valuations have they've gone down, but I mean, very minimal, I think Orlando in general, we've always had population growth. We've always had these businesses, right? And then during COVID, we had even more people moving to the state, a lot of people moving to Central Florida, moving their businesses here. So I think the next 10 years for Orlando is probably going to be the most impactful time this city has ever seen. I mean, I think the next 10 years is going to be what really sets this city apart from everybody else. And you're starting to see some of it, I mean, infrastructure wise, they're built, we were talking about like the Bright Line train that's coming. Yeah. Because one of our guys in the office was complaining about driving to Miami. And I was like, oh, that drive is the worst. It's the absolute worst. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you have a train in like 3.5 hours. You're in Miami. And by the way, you have Wi-Fi. You can have a cocktail. Use the phone.
Weren't you on it? Like,
yeah, I think we were talking about it last time we were together, and I was just raving about it for 20. It smells nice in there.
You should quit.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
This is a Bright Line commercial.
Exactly. No, but it's like, that also I think is going to really open up Orlando as well. Everyone here thinks about it as like, oh, we get to go to Miami. It's like, no, also that's going to bring all of these, South Florida up to here, and people are going to realize like, wow, my friends in South Florida, they complain about how expensive it is and stuff. And they come out here and they're like happy to pay for dinner because they're like, oh, this is even cheaper than like two of us.
Oh yeah.
So I just think that between the economy diversifying the way it has, the people that have moved here, and you're starting to see businesses that have always thought about Florida, thought about maybe Central Florida, Orlando. They've made some moves here, with the way you've seen the way, we the state was open for business and
Right.
people really, appreciated that.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I think that's what's going to set the next 10 years is everything that's really happened as we're heading into COVID and what happened during COVID. People understand, well, if I own a business or I'm part of this business and I want this thing to grow and not have to worry about certain things, this is the place to be. So, I mean, again, living here my whole life, I mean, I think the last 10 years has been pretty impressive. After going through that downturn and then you started to see, early, like 10 years ago, like 2012, 13, you started to see, things happening around here, a lot of different businesses. But even as we head into this recession, I mean, look, everything's cyclical, right? Like in business. So we'll go through it. But as we come out of it and get to that, say, 10-year mark, I mean, this is going to be one of the best cities in the world.
I think the point for me was like during COVID, you'd figure Orlando would be taking it really hard given how tourism driven we are. And if I was driving down the street, I'm seeing restaurants opening.
Yeah.
In the heart of COVID. Restaurants opening,
Week
bars
by
opening.
week.
And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? That was the moment. I'm like, Orlando's got something special. Florida in general does, but Orlando specifically is so much more than what people think it is.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
drive in Disney. Thank you, Disney. They've helped grow to Orlando to what it is now. But my wife, who I dragged up from South Florida, and I can say dragged up because she was not excited to come to Orlando because her only experience was I drive in Disney.
Yeah.
And as much as she loves Disney, that's all it was to her. And she came to Winter Park and she's like, wow, this is an incredible community. Her parents come up here all the time. Their friends come up to visit
Oh, yeah.
just because of what, not only from a business standpoint, but from a community standpoint, like what we've built here and what is going to continue to be built. So it's exciting for us, which is why we're doing this. 'cause
Right.
There's so many cool stories and so many cool conversations to be had.
Well, it's also like what you were talking about, restaurants and stuff being open,
Yeah.
right? Like remember growing up, it was all the franchise restaurants, right?
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong, we all got friends who were at Darden. Darden, brought all of that here,
Right.
right? Great company. Because I remember growing up, you wanted to go out to like a nice Italian dinner, you went out to Olive Garden, right? Like that was
Bravo's
your
Olive Garden,
taste of
yeah.
Italian, right? And that's what it used to be. And now like the craziest thing for me when I started seeing Orlando getting divided up into like districts and
Exactly.
neighborhoods, I was like, no way, this isn't real. And you go and it really is a neighborhood.
There's an
Mhm.
It's a
identity.
community, locally owned restaurants, locally owned bars, breweries. I mean, that's when I was like, okay, now this town is taking a
Turning
shape
the
of its
corner.
own.
Yeah, you see
And
College
really-
Park, Ivanhoe Village, Mills,
Yeah.
then
Well, it's- I was-
classic Winter Park.
Yeah. I was in Austin, Texas last week, which is kind of the epitome of this last 10 years too.
Yeah.
Just the US kind of converging right there, and you go out to eat and there's some, don't get me wrong, great restaurants, but I would put a lot of ours up against even a
without
city
a
like
doubt.
that or
Without a doubt.
wherever you want to talk about. And it's just cool for, I think for Mitchell and I too, because you're kind of in that stage above us and we're all very passionate about Orlando, but to hear you say this is going to be the most impactful decade coming up
Without a
after
doubt.
what we've already
Yeah.
been through is that gets me fired up.
Just seeing, and I'm comparing that to, from growing up, what I used to see, which wasn't much. I mean, look, man, I grew up on Markham Woods Road,
Right.
where like Lake Mary Boulevard was still like a dirt road,
Mhm.
I mean, it was insane, right? And then like
Right.
Heathrow gets built, and you're like, wait a minute. So I've seen everything from that
Right.
to like when they built the Orlando Arena, I was
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, we have an NBA team,
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Magic are also on the up and up. Which
Oh,
is
yeah.
Yes.
incredibly
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're. I don't want to get too excited yet about that, but I've just made that mistake before. But
I've guarded
Right.
my heart for too long. I'm kind of letting
I'm in
Orlando
now.
I'm
Magic
ready to
I'm
be
in
heard.
now.
just
I'm ready to be
Yeah.
heard again.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm in now again. I'm in. Oh man. No, it's just seeing all of that and then where it is now. I think it's what they've created. It's almost like when you look at like a baseline of something, right?
Yes.
Like I just think the baseline we have right now is going to hold like that, and from here I just feel like it can only go up, and it will. It will. I mean, you don't really hear of anybody like saying, "Oh, well, I want to move from here to South Florida." You may hear that, but I just really don't anymore. Like
Right.
all of my friends who have moved away, other cities, whether it's they get sick of the weather, the taxes, they start having families, and it's like you can live here and great taxes, great weather,
Right.
and all of these, just good people. Like I can't explain it. Every time I even meet people in town, they're- I just end up meeting like good people, whether they're from here or not.
Exactly.
Just people tend to, I don't know. I just think we have kind of a, I don't want to say a mood, but kind of I don't know, maybe it's like culture or something. Like,
Yeah. I was gonna say, how do you describe? Because you're clearly very much a people person, like we are, and we all grew up here. But what is the identity? I feel like we're trying to figure out our identity
I
as a
like that question. That's a
community.
good question.
But and clearly
yeah.
we all kind of feel it, and you're out there meeting with everyone.
I honestly don't even think we have an identity yet.
Yeah.
I still think it's we're figuring it out. Like, it's like we have all of these good things going, but at some point, when does it become when they're the cities like Chicago, Boston, New York, like when you meet someone, it's like, no, I'm from New York,
Right.
like we're not there yet. Where people around here is like, no, we're from Orlando, like there's no, because even I'm like, no, I'm from
Right.
Winter Park,
Right.
Winter Park, not Orlando. No, but I still think that's getting figured out because, again, saying I was born and raised here. I mean, just over the years, this has just been more of a tourism city where people
Right.
are moving in and out, moving in and out. Now it's becoming established. So I think that's going to start becoming. I think the identity is still being figured out.
Yeah.
If you're asking me, I people who've grown up here, it's like we know what this town is like, but a lot of people just haven't, I don't think, been here long enough to kind of have that identity. And it's still, which is not a bad thing, by the way.
Well, it's incredibly diverse. I mean, you look at like the
That's-
U.S.
yeah.
is so diverse, Florida is
Right.
so diverse, and I feel like Orlando is incredibly diverse as well. And so we're,
Oh yeah.
you have like those neighborhoods, like you said, that have their own identity, but as a larger Central Florida area,
Right.
we're still figuring it out, but
Yeah.
it's positive. I can tell you that for whatever it
Definitely.
is.
No, this is home, man. Like I'm like business we have here is always going to be here. My home's always going to be here.
Yes.
Like this is always going to be home. This is where we're raising our family. I mean, we're always going to be here. Like there's never going to be a time, and I can even say that now. I mean, even 10, 20 years from now, there's never going to be like, let's go move to somewhere else. Like that'll never
Right.
ever come out of my mouth.
We're seeing like,
Love it.
we're seeing this massive pilgrimage just from our social network. Like
Yeah.
people moved out to New York, like you said, to cut their teeth, Atlanta, Charlotte, all that. And now everyone's slowly coming back. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's when people want to start settling down, having a family, they're like, okay, where do I want to raise them? To your point, this is the place because we're seeing it actively with our age group.
Right. It's a good home base for sure.
It's a great home base. I mean, look, man, we've got
Very
great
hard to beat.
schools here.
The airport, the
Airport,
whatever you want
but
to
even
say.
even the great schools like elementary, high school, but
Right.
the colleges in Florida too are
Oh,
unbelievable. I mean,
I think you've already touched on it very well and kind of just articulated a lot about yourself and great story that we wanted to pull out. But what's your why in terms of business, professionally, family wise? What's your why? Like some people, it may be, I'm in all these ventures because I want to earn as much money as I can and then cash out, or it could be I love the process of building these companies. The people clearly is a big part for you.
yeah, for a while I had a tough time answering that question. I mean, I just never really figured out
Right.
what am I doing, right? Like at one point in my life, I just felt like, hey, I worked on this deal, now I'm doing another deal, but it was never like I was never building something, and I think that's what I realized when I'd watched what my dad did. I mean, he came over from India with nothing, built up a business, built up a network, heavily
Mhm.
involved in the Indian community here, which was like when we were here, I think we were like the seventh or eighth family that like
Yeah.
moved here, in the it was a mid to early 70s. Um, just taking a look, and it's always this sounds cliche. It's like once you have a kid, you start thinking about that kind of stuff. Like, wait a minute, like what am I doing? Like, what am I
Mhm.
actually? It used to be all about me. Now it's not all about me,
Right.
and you always thought money was like the most important thing, which it's still important. Don't get me wrong. I'm very money driven. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Um, but it was finally figuring out like I want to build something that not only for me, but like what we're doing with 1858. I hope 10, 20 years from now, I'm still going to the office. Like it's still there. I mean, I'm in it for the long game, like whether there's, certain deals, liquidity events, this and that, like I just don't want to stop, and it's not again because I'm just motivated by business. I just really love what I do. Like I love getting out in the community. I love giving back. I love meeting with people and getting together with people, just talk shop or socially, but still just being in the mix with
Right.
everything and meeting new people and figuring out. It's just, I mean, that's what I wake up loving to do. And I just can't really see myself doing something else. And I mean, like I always joke with like my father-in-law, he's retired. He was a big banker and everything. And I kind of watch him in retirement. I'm like, oh man, like what do you do every day? And he
Mm.
tells me, I'm like, oh man, that's boring, like, and I'm like, so are you playing golf? He's like, no, not really. I'm like, why not? Like, isn't that what so it just with what I do, it just ties into everything I love doing
Right.
personally and professionally. And I just really want to have something built not only for myself, but for my family. And, hopefully as I get older and there's like the generation even below you guys coming in, and then I'm like the old guy at Hillstone, like meeting with like some young guys, like dropping knowledge on them and telling them how it used to be and kind
Mhm.
of
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Because I see some of those guys out who are still in the mix, and I think it's awesome, you know. But I think going back to your question, I just never I'd always worked on things where I was helping other people build something, but now I finally realized, like, and I think with this, with 1858, with everything I've done throughout my career, I mean, that's my why. Now it's to build this, and it ties into everything I've ever done, ties into, people I've known even since I was 9 years old. I mean, we do stuff together, and building that is my why. That's my long term build. I mean, this is not a 3-5 year play. I mean, this is a
Right.
long lasting, long standing deal that we want to do. There was something last week. We were at that ACG Capital Connection conference,
Yeah, I saw that.
and we were talking about it was like young emerging professionals, and the one thing after talking about what we talked about earlier, and someone's like, what advice could you give to someone coming up who's that this was 35 and under,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So now I'm like the old guy, right? Like
We're laughing because we were about
We
to
were that
ask
was
you
the
about
question
this
we were getting to.
again.
Yeah.
Oh
That was
yeah.
perfect. You're on
No,
top of
so
it.
like, and I remember someone asked me, they're like, if you give someone advice, and I go, the things that have really helped me, I guess, let's say that is, you know, just be patient when you're presented with an opportunity. Don't always chase everything. Like everything has to be perfect timing. Not perfect. There's no such thing as perfect timing.
Mhm.
Sorry. But the timing has to be right. Pay
Right.
attention to the people that are going to be part of that opportunity, and don't be afraid to take that opportunity. I mean, you don't want to just take something like, do like make sure you're ready, make sure you're able to take that risk at that time, and just pay attention to the people. And then outside of that, the only other bit of advice I gave was, build up your network. Like, make sure you get out there. Don't always, build up a network for yourself. Don't always make it about the company you're with. If you're looking at doing something on your own, you're with a big company, create your own network, build those relationships, maintain those relationships. That's what Danny and I even talk about, where like he and my friends are like, Jay, dude, you know everybody. And this I go, well, I know everybody because I took the time to
Right.
get to know them.
Yeah,
I took the time to meet with them. And it's not always like you meet somebody, hey, what do you do? Like I usually, even at this conference, like it was very like, M&A focused, deal making. And was like, hey, what do you do? What deals? I'm like, look, man, where are you from? Like,
Yeah.
And just
Actually try to do that.
yeah, like even like get to know people, and even when you're trying to look for opportunities for yourself, pay attention to your conversations and connect people too. Like don't always make it, it's like, wait, I actually talked to somebody the other day that's also looking for this. Why don't I just do an email intro, connect you guys? That's the type of, like, when I talk about goodwill and things coming back. I've done a ton of free favors where people have met, done business together, made money together. No, that's fine. Like you know, I'm happy for them, honestly. I had at the conference, a friend of mine in insurance that I introduced to another friend of mine, who's an M&A attorney, had a deal that was going through, needed like rep and warranty insurance, needed a big insurance agency to handle it. I just connected them. Well, one friend's out of Tampa, other friend here. He tells me at the conference, he goes, hey, I don't know if I told you this. You introduced me to, so-and-so. And he ended up calling me. We actually connected and we closed that deal 2 days ago. And it was a pretty big deal. And I was happy.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's awesome. This and that. And, and of course, I got nothing out of it. Not like I care, right? I was just really happy to hear that.
Right.
However, he did say, when I come to Tampa, like, golf, dinner, everything,
Yeah.
everything's on him. But it's even just hearing that, because of that, the two of them both reached out to me independently, like, thank you, like, whatever I can do for you, or let me know, what if you just keep doing that enough for people. The other thing I said, just be patient while you're building up your network. Be patient. It doesn't come back to you right away. You're developing this over time. But once you do enough of those, and when you're starting a business, when we started 1858, and I'm reaching out to people, I remember people like, whatever you need, like, whatever, you've helped me so much over the last 10 years. You've been like, what do you like? Who are you looking to meet? Who can I introduce you to? I don't care who it is, like whoever I know. And that's when, you can really see it come around. So
that's help. There's so many guys like us who are just starting to hit our strides and trying to figure out, what the next step is. So thanks for the advice. That's helpful. And thanks for coming in.
No, this was great.
Incredible.
Yeah,
I told you it's gonna be like conversation like we were at Prado, and that's what it was. So
yeah, just get some beers out now. It'll be like the same thing.
If it wasn't,
that's the idea.
If it wasn't earlier, we'd absolutely do
Oh, wait, we actually have to do stuff today. That's right.
It's 11:30. We're getting close.
We're getting close.
Next time will be after hours for real.
Yeah.
Grab some beers.
Well, that's what we were saying. We're like, the premise has been to have beers, whiskey, wine, whatever. But we would have done it, but I didn't want to. I knew you had work to do.
No. Yeah, this was fun.